parents, young parents today of little kids, like preschool kids, are bringing up their kids in a completely different environment than what we were doing. So when we were bringing up our kids, we were trying to be Christian, trying to be a Christian family and Christian child rearing in a world that was worldly and didn't have the same values and stuff. But the outside world, even though it was worldly and not Christian, was still more or less right side up. A boy was a boy and a girl was a girl, and divorce was the negative thing. And, it was, they had certain things that were left over from a time when we had more of a Christian consensus. So we had the easier task of bringing up children to live like Christians and consistent Christians in a world where people were sinful but not demented. And Christian parents today are bringing up their children where you're not just dealing with old-fashioned sin. You're dealing with sort of a rebellion against all reality. It's like they want a bumper sticker that says "Make reality optional," and of course, reality is not optional. And in the old school, you had to equip your children. The world was hard and unyielding, and it could eat you up if you weren't prepared. And so you prepared your children to navigate the world. You taught your children how to adapt and think on the fly and stand their ground, and how you equipped your children to confront and fit with the world. Well, now the subtitle of the book is dealing with raising children in an age of therapeutic sentimentalism, and now the consensus is that the world must conform to your child's feelings. Feelings are central. If someone feels like a girl, then they are a girl. If they feel a certain way, then that's the way it must be. And everyone else must cater to that. And that's the demand. And Christians are trying to bring up their kids in a time when everything is against them. It's not just I don't accept your teaching on things like sexual morality, like promiscuity or whatever. It's I don't accept your teaching on being a creature that's made a certain way. And so this full-scale assault on reality is something that we have to learn how to deal with, and we have to find communities that will reinforce us as we are trying to complete this shared task.
You've just touched on one of the major inversions that's happened, particularly over the past decade. But when you think about raising children in this modern world, what do you think are the biggest risks or dangers or concerns that parents should be aware of and watch out for?
Sure. So there are two reactions. I'm fond of saying there's always a ditch on both sides of the road, right? You can veer off into the right ditch, or you can veer off into the left ditch. The right ditch, and I would say the biggest practical threat to children is how wired they are. All right. So pretty much every teenager in America has a portal in his pocket or her purse to every porn library in the world. Right. So they've got access to everywhere. They've got access not only to the bad side of town, but to the bad side of every town. Right? And oftentimes parents are not on top of not on top of what's going on at all. So they don't know what's on their kids' Spotify playlist. They don't know what apps their kids are using to communicate with the other kids. They don't know what movies or reels are being watched. The parents just don't know. Now, some parents just sort of say, well, that's kids will be kids, and we just have to roll with it and just let the kids do whatever. That's the right ditch. That's one ditch. The other ditch is for parents to unplug everything and go live in the mountains in a log cabin. It's sort of a neo-Amish option. We are going to unplug from everything and hide away from the world. The problem with that is that doesn't work either. because wherever you go, however far up in the mountains you go, you take all the sinners with you. You take sinners with you, and you're basically trying to fight licentiousness with law, and law doesn't work. It's not a strong enough barrier to keep the world out. For that you need gospel. For that you need grace, and grace has to have a brain. It has to be intelligent. It has to be taught. So what you need to do is equip your children to interact with the world, which is going to be far more intrusive than the world was 50 years ago. The world's coming after your kids. They're not content to leave them alone, and so you have to teach them how to respond. This is the play. So this is I'm going to date myself by using this illustration, but when my kids were in junior high school level, my kids are grandparents now. Some of my kids are grandparents now, so this is a ways ago. But when they were junior high school age, MTV was just coming out. MTV was just the latest thing. And this was so far ago that MTV actually played music videos. That's something that's the way it was back then. So what I would do is I'd turn on MTV, which we're conservative Christians, and that's a worldly sort of thing. But what I would do is I'd turn on MTV, and I'd sit down with my kids, and we'd watch a music video, and then I'd turn it off. And then I'd ask my kids, okay, what was that? What were they saying? What was the worldview of that band? And the band could be nihilistic, black despair, Nirvana type stuff. It could be hedonistic. It could there were any number of options. But what I wanted my kids to learn how to do is not just consume like thoughtlessly with all the discernment of a vacuum cleaner. I didn't want them to just take in the gunk, but I didn't want to hide them from the gunk either, because I knew that they're going to encounter the gunk sometime, and I wanted them to be equipped when that day happened. So you protect your kids when your kids are younger from the awful stuff. But as they get older, they're going to be going out into the battlefield themselves. They're going to marry, and they're going to have kids of their own, and they have to be ready to encounter what they're going to run into out there, like thinking Christians. So you can't just say, "Oh, that's a worldly band and it has a backbeat." That's not good. That's not good enough. You have to. The greatest commandment in all of Scripture is in Deuteronomy 6, and it is, interestingly, a command that is given to parents in the context of child rearing and education. So you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Well, notice in that you learn to love the Lord your God with all your brains. That Jesus adds mind when he gives us that same command. And this is in Deuteronomy 6. It's in the context of teaching your children. When you rise up, when you walk along the road, when you lie down, when you're having conversations around the dinner table, when you're talking to your kids in the back seat at the intersection, you're to be talking about the world in the light of God's word. And that has to be an intelligent interaction. Because if you're just blowing smoke at your kids, well, that's bad because it's worldly. Well, why is it worldly? Well, because it's, I don't know, shut up. We're Christians, we don't do that sort of thing. That kind of thing is going to be deeply unsatisfying to any intelligent kid. And they see that their parents are just, blowing sunshine at them. And so there's no meat in the instruction. And so what you want to do is enable your kids to recognize what this artist is assuming, what he's standing on when he says what he says, why the things that he's saying flow from his root assumptions, and so on. And that means that when they encounter the hot new band 5 years from now that you, the parent, never heard of. They're equipped in how to do a worldview analysis. They're equipped in how to break it down and solve the problem for themselves. But you've got to, in order to do that, you have to have thinking kids. And unfortunately, it's not possible to have thinking kids without thinking parents.
How would you modify that for a 2025 version?
Yeah. Part of my problem is I can give, because here I am, aging boomer, I can give hand-on principles, and I use computers and smartphones and everything, but periodically I will discover, a pile of unread messages that people have been sending me on an app that I didn't know did messages. What is this? So I'm not the.
It happens
I'm not
to us millennials too, if that's any if that's any comfort.
If that's any consolation, I didn't know GarageBand had a messaging thing. Basically, what I would want to do is emphasize principles, but the principles would have to apply in new areas, like what is being assumed, for example, in a world where 80% of your interaction with your friends is texting. Okay, God gave us a three-dimensional world, and we want to live in a three-dimensional world. And even if, let's say you assuming for the sake of discussion, that you got a group of high school kids who text each other all the time, and let's say, in a remarkable providence, it stays wholesome. There's no cattiness, there's no savagery, there's no bullying, and there's no sexual innuendo. Let's say the kids keep it wholesome. There's still a problem with them learning to communicate in 2 dimensions only, right? So on the one hand, this is another topic that relates to another book I wrote called Productivity, where technology is not technology is a gift from God, and if you look up computers or software or smartphones in your Bible, you find nothing about it. There's nothing about it. But I argue that technology is a form of wealth. And wealth has a particular bias. In this fallen world, wealth has the bias, and the wealthy are tempted to forget God. That's the bias. They become self-sufficient. They become full of themselves. And if I show you my smartphone here, I've got 100,000 servants on this thing, and Nebuchadnezzar needed actually had to have 100,000 servants in order to have the things done for him that this thing will do. I need a servant who speaks Anglo-Saxon. I need a servant who carries a Latin dictionary around with him all the time. I need a servant who can give me the pitch for tuning my guitar. I need a servant who, I've got all these servants. Well, what this is staggering wealth. That's what it is. It's staggering wealth. And I have to teach my kids today how to handle wealth, right? So when I was a kid, you could, and I'm not trying to, I know how this sounds, but when I was a kid, you could be occupied all afternoon in the backyard with a couple of sticks, right? You just play with your brothers and sisters, and you played until dark, and you were playing with sticks, and that was however much fun it was, and it was a lot of fun. It was not wealthy. It was not the rich kid. It was the lower middle class kid playing with sticks. Well, even just about everybody today has these servants, has these people send messages and do things all the time, and the thing that comes in with that, the temptation that comes in with that, is self-sufficiency and entitlement. All right, self-sufficiency and entitlement. So one of the things that parents have to do is teach their children what the temptation is, and also provide them with spaces or areas where they are unplugged. You don't want a dinner table with 5 or 6 people sitting around the dinner table all looking at their phones. It should be no phones at the dinner table. That kind of thing. Or you teach your kids to you let them have a smartphone, but you don't let them have and you don't let them form profiles. If you're a 12-year-old girl and you have an Instagram profile and you are depressed or exalted based on how many likes you got, there's a distortion that's coming in with that. And what happens is people curate. The last thing in the world we want to do is teach teens who are coming of age the lessons of how important it is to curate an image that's nothing at all like their actual life, right? Your actual life doesn't have filters that you can put on it. Your actual life is mundane. Your actual life, you've got to love actual people, and you've got to clean up actual dishes, and you've got to obey your mom, and you've got to do all this stuff. And that's not how Instagram functions. And so what happens is one of my sons with my grandchildren, he said, one of my gifts to you is that none of you will have a profile. All right, you can't curate your life and put it out there for people to admire and applaud. That's not what this is for. At the same time, because technology is a tool and it's not inherently evil, you can see how electronic devices would drive a family apart. Everybody eats their meals over the sink, or they'll have dinner in a cursory fashion, and then everybody retreats to their bedroom to watch whatever movie they're going to watch on their computer. You can see how technology would be a fragmenting thing. But it can also, if you have a biblical worldview, it can also be something that unifies everybody. So, I've got 3 kids and 18 grandkids and some great-grands. And one of the things, we have a family chat group, and we called Parliament of Owls. And we can talk to each other all day. When I was first married, when I would go to work in the morning, I would occasionally get a call from my wife, or I'd call her at home, and the phone was this thing attached to the wall with a wire. I had to go to the phone and call her, and it was a kind of a deal. It was kind of a big deal if I called her. And now we can chat with each other all day long on the fly, or she can drive up to Spokane with one of our daughters, and they can be shopping, and they can take a photo of a dress that they could pick up for a cousin, and text a picture of it. Do you want this? People can talk all day long with one another. In other words, the technology can be used like any tool to unify or bring closer together, to serve and love one another. But that doesn't happen all by itself. It has to be cultivated. It has to be encouraged. You have to teach on it. If you just let it ride all by itself, then what's going to happen is your family ties are going to get weaker and weaker and weaker, because your kids are going to have a support group that's not related to you at all, and their friends at school are liking their post or giving thumbs up to their posts, and nobody at home does that.